Hey everyone, I'm just getting ready for a liftoff. I'm headed to the moon, but before I do that, I thought I'd take a minute to teach you all about adding mixed numbers. So let's get started. Alright, it is time we learned how to add mixed numbers with like denominators. So your steps are up here to help you through it, and you can follow along with me, starting with number 1. We have 3 and 9/10, and we're adding 5 and 4/10. When we add fractions, we know the denominators have to be the same, so always double check. 10 and 10 are the same. Step 1 is going to be to add the fractions. Always add the fractions first. This will help us when we start subtracting fractions. So I'm going to take 9/10 plus 4/10 and get 13/10. Then I'm going to add the wholes. 3 plus 5 equals 8. So now I have the mixed number 8 and 13/10, but I can see 13/10 is an improper fraction. So I need to see how many wholes I can take away from my improper fraction and add it to my whole. So to do that, I'm going to determine how many times can I count by 10 to hopefully get to 13 without going over. And that's only one time, because 10 times 2 would be 20. So I can take one whole out of here. I can take it away, so that would be minus 10 over 10. And I can add that whole that I took away to my whole. So if I have 8 plus 10 over 10, I know I get a whole of 9 because I'm adding one whole for 10 over 10. And if I take away 10/10 from 13/10, 13 minus 10 equals 3. So I get 9 and 3/10. 3/10 is now a fraction like normal with 9 wholes. So my answer is 9 and 3/10. Let's try number 2. 1 and 8/9 plus 2 and 2/9. When I'm adding fractions, the denominators have to be the same. 9 and 9 are, so I'm good. First, I'm going to add the fractions. 8/9 plus 2/9 equals 10/9. Now I'm going to add the wholes. 1 plus 2 equals 3. So I get 3 and 10/9. Now I need to determine how many wholes are in the fraction. So 9 times what gets me close to 10 without going over? That would be 1. So I can take one whole away, 9 over 9, from my fraction. And my denominator is going to be 9 because that stays the same. And I can add one whole to my whole. So when I do that, 3 plus 1 whole equals 4. And 10/9 minus 1 whole 9/9 equals 1/9. And I get an answer of 4 and 1/9. Number 3, 1 and 5/10 plus 6 and 6/10. When I'm adding fractions, my denominators have to be the same. 10 and 10 are the same. So first I'm going to add my fractions. 5/10 plus 6/10 equals 11/10. Then I add the wholes. 1 plus 6 equals 7. And I have 7 and 11/10. 11/10 is an improper fraction. So I need to determine how many wholes I have. 10 times what gets me close to 11 without going over? That would be 10 times 1. There's one whole in this fraction. So if I take away one whole, minus 10 over 10, because 10 is my denominator, and add a whole to my whole number, 10 over 10, then 7 plus 1 whole equals 8, and 11/10 minus 10 over 10, or 1 whole, equals 1, and my denominator stays the same. So I get an answer of 8 and 1/10. Number 4. 1 and 11/12 plus 1 and 6/12. I am adding, so my denominators have to be the same. 12 and 12 are the same. I'm going to add 11/12 plus 6/12 to get 17/12. Then I'm going to add my whole numbers. 1 plus 1 equals 2. So I have 2 and 17/12. I can see that 17/12 is an improper fraction because there's more than a whole in the numerator. So I determine 12 times what gets me close to 17 without going over. That would be 12 times 1. So I can take one whole away from my fraction, so minus 12 over 12, since my denominator is 12, and add a whole to my whole number, so plus 12 over 12. So 2 wholes plus 1 whole equals 3, and 17 twelfths minus the whole 12 twelfths equals 5 twelfths. And I get an answer of 3 and 5 twelfths. Okay, number 5 on the back, 7 and 3/8 plus 5 and 5/8. I'm adding fractions, so my denominators have to be the same. 8 and 8 are the same, so I can just start adding. Add the fractions first. 3/8 plus 5/8 equals 8/8. 7 wholes plus 5 wholes equals 12. Now I see I have 8 over 8. That's like having 1 whole. When I determine 8 times what gets me close to 8 without going over, I know 8 times 1 equals 8 exactly. So if I take away 1 whole, 8 over 8, because 8 is my denominator, and add 1 whole to 12, 12 plus a whole equals 13. And 8 over 8 minus the whole 8 over 8 equals 0/8. So my answer is 13 and 0/8. And if you have a fraction that's 0 parts out of 8, you don't even really need to write the fraction. You can just write 13. Let's try number 6. 8 and 2/4 plus 3 and 2/4. I am adding fractions, so my denominators have to be the same. 4 and 4 are. Let me add the fractions first. 2/4 plus 2/4 equals 4/4. Add the wholes. 8 plus 3 equals 11. Now I see 4 over 4 again is 1 whole. So when I take a whole away from 4 over 4 and add a whole to 11, 11 plus the whole 4 over 4 equals 12. And 4 over 4 minus 1 whole, 4 over 4 is 0/4. And I don't ever have to have a fraction if there's 0 in the numerator, where the part we're focusing on is 0. It doesn't matter what the fraction is. It's just an answer of 12. Number 7, 4 and 6/8 plus 1 and 7/8. I'm adding fractions, so my denominators have to be the same. 8 and 8 are. So I'm going to start by adding the fractions. 6 plus 7 equals 13 eighths, because my denominator stays the same. Then add the wholes. 4 plus 1 equals 5. Now I have 5 and 13/8, so I have an improper fraction as my fraction. So I need to determine 8 times what gets me close to 13 without going over. That would be 8 times 1 would get me close to 13. So I can take away 1 whole, minus 8 over 8, because 8 is my denominator, and add 1 whole to my whole number 5. When I do 5 plus 1 whole, I get 6, and 13/8 minus the whole 8/8 equals 5/8. So my answer is 6 and 5/8. Number 8, 5 and 4/8 plus 8 and 5/8. I'm adding fractions, so my denominators have to be the same. 4/8 plus 5/8 equals 9/8. Add the wholes. 5 plus 8 equals 14. Now I can see that my improper fraction, 9 over 8, because I have more than a whole in the numerator. So I need to determine 8 times what gets me close to 9 without going over. That would be 1. So I can take away 1 whole, so 8 over 8, and add 1 whole, 8 over 8, to my actual whole. So if I have 14 plus 1 whole, I get 15. If I have 9/8 minus 1 whole, 8 over 8, I get 1/8. So my answer is 15 and 1/8. Number 9, 6 and 6/12 plus 4 and 6/12. First, let's see if our denominators are the same. 12 and 12 are, so I can add my fractions. 6/12 plus 6/12 equals 12/12. And then I add my wholes. 6 plus 4 equals 10. 12 over 12 is the same as 1 whole. So if I'm subtracting the whole from here, I need to add the whole to my whole of 10. So 10 plus 1 whole is 11, and 12 over 12 minus 12 over 12 equals 0 twelfths. And I know if I have a 0 in the numerator, I don't need to do anything. My answer is just 11. And finally, number 10, 4 5/8 plus 3 4/8. First, I need to check I'm adding, so my denominators have to be the same. 8 and 8 are. So I can add my fractions. 5/8 plus 4/8 equals 9/8. Then add the wholes. 4 plus 3 equals 7. I have 7 and 9/8. 9/8 is an improper fraction because I have more than a whole in the numerator. So 8 times what gets me close to 9 without going over? That would be 8 times 1. So I can take away 1 whole minus 8 over 8, because 8 is my denominator, and add a whole to the 7 plus 8 over 8. When I take 7 plus 1 whole, I get 8. When I take 9/8 minus the whole 8 over 8, I get 1/8. And my answer is 8 1/8. Okay, I hope that helped you learn how to add mixed numbers. I wish I could stick around to help you more, but got a blast. Bye.